Hi, I'm Lucia from Marathon Mates. On this episode of the Flying Runr, we're talking all things race expos, my favourite thing. Have you ever arrived at a race expo only to be disappointed by the size and the extent of the event? Maybe you've also been dissatisfied by the number and types of exhibitors. We'll discuss whether race expos have done their dash, are they past their prime, and what improvements from a runner's perspective can be made to race expos to make them that little bit more enjoyable. Trust us, we've got the experience and the knowledge, as we are the only podcast with 4 6-star marathon medalist co-hosts. This is the Flying Runr. This is the Flying Runr podcast. Are you ready to run? Let's go.
Welcome to the thrilling world of the Flying Runr, brought to you by the Marathon Mates.
Hi everyone, and welcome back to Flying Runr. I'm the chair from Marathon Mates, and this is episode 99. And tonight we're talking everything that there is to know about race expos. We share the good, the bad, and the downright ugly, in which we've seen over the years from the extensive list of marathon expos that we've been to. But just before we talk about race expos, let me introduce you to my marathon mates. Tony, Tim, and Tara, the awesome foursome, are back together.
Yes.
Very, very happy. So finally, I've got my partner in crime, and I'm no longer the rose between two thorns.
Seriously, Tim and I are not that bad, Lucia. So
let me have it. Come on, guys.
You'll keep. I'll get you back when you least expect it.
I know, and that's the problem. You will. I don't have any doubt you won't. So, guys, welcome to the show. And more importantly, who's getting excited for next week's episode 100? So, guys, how was your training?
You can hear the excitement.
No, I know. Give me something here.
I'm excited, Lucia. I'm excited. 100 episodes is a big deal.
I'm excited because the questions, last couple of days to get your questions in. So please, on any of our social media channels or email the happyrunning@flyingrunner.com.
For instance, if you want to know how Tara and I put up with Tony and Tim, ask us. We're more than happy to answer it. There's no doubt I'll probably say that Tara and I are impossible. But before we get really sidetracked, guys, how was everyone's weekend? I'm going to start with Team Ellis.
Yeah, so we did park run on Saturday. We walked I walked. Yeah, you walked park run too. Yeah, so Tim and I walked park run together at Chermside Park Run. So I'm still not allowed to run yet, unfortunately. And then on Sunday, Tim and Patrick, who was, as everyone knows, training for his first marathon, they went out and did 25 Ks of running, and I walked 16. So that's my longest walk that I've done since having my pacemaker put in, and felt fantastic. Feel very, very good. So just took it easy, took it slow, and just enjoyed the morning. Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah, and I think last time I talked about Patrick trying to do a 25K, he talked himself out of it beforehand, but this time he did really well. He listened to his body as he went out there. He focused on the kilometre he was in, didn't worry about the times, didn't worry about the distance, and he got through it really easily. So really happy with him. And as I said in that episode a couple of weeks ago, when you're going from half marathon to marathon, it is a tough slog doing those extra kilometres beyond the half marathon distance. But if you try not to think about it and you just go for the moment and enjoy the moment, time ticks away pretty quickly, which is what it did yesterday on our long run.
Awesome. And Tony?
Yeah, I think I had a pretty good week, although a little bit of pain on Sunday, just general body soreness, I think, more so than anything. But before I do, I just need to do a quick shout out to Lisa, who messaged me after hearing about Sharon's high hamstring tendinopathy. And I'd also like to thank Lisa for spelling it so I can now actually say it, as I wasn't able to say it on the last episode. She sent through some tips because she had the same thing. So thank you so much, Lisa. And before I get into my training, I also have to share a bit of a story about the QUT Classic, because I shared last week that I went 109.58 to get under 1 hour and 10. My official time was 1 hour, 10 minutes and 58 seconds.
Oh,
Exactly 1 minute difference. So I've looked at it, I've analyzed the results, and the only thing that I can suggest is that at some stage during the QUT Classic, I time traveled, and there was a glitch in the matrix, and I was shifted 1 minute. Yeah, so it's the only reasonable excuse or reason that that it was exactly 1 minute. So really weird, but anyway.
What did your Garmin say, Tony, on the day?
109.58, and
That's the only one that counts.
And QUT said 110.58. So it was time travel. It's a reasonable thing. I know it's available nowadays. Just look at Kipchoge. He continues to get younger. So no, I actually have been playing with my Garmin a little bit and absolutely loving it, because I'm understanding some of the features that I've got that I probably have never used before. But 2 weeks ago, I set out on a run, and it was only like a 4 or a 5K or something. And I set it at my average. So you can go into the training part just before you go, press run, and you can choose time and distance. And then it's going to give you the option to say, choose your last run or choose your best run. So a couple of weeks back, I chose my last run. So then I raced against that, which was pretty exciting. But then on the weekend, I did the same thing, but I went 16K at 2 hours, and all I wanted to do was go under 2 hours. And I find the data screen really interesting because it's counting down the miles as opposed to counting up and giving you a expected finish time. So, but based on whatever pace you've got. So it was really cool. So really enjoyed that. And yeah, so I'm finding out more and more about Garmin. So, and really exciting.
It's
excellent stuff.
amazing how often we don't use those features that are on our watch, that we just go, oh, somebody shows you, and then you're just like, that is fantastic. How did I not know about this? So that's a good tip for all of our listeners as well, Tony.
Absolutely. I was going to walk everyone through it, but I know we've got a packed show, so I won't. But maybe there's an option there for us at one of our next episodes where we can start showcasing how people do find some of these functions. And I know a lot of our listeners listen to us while we're out on training runs, so it's probably going to be useless for them. However, there may be an opportunity that they come back and listen to it again just so that they can work through some of those functions. But yeah. Hey, but just before we leave and pass it over to Lucia again, Garmin has released some new models which have come through, the 970, the 570 and the 270. And Garmin, we're still waiting on our test one, so to give them a review. But noticeably, there is some features on their new watches that are only available through their paid programs. And the one that springs to mind is there's now a trail finder that you can use on your watch, where you can find safe trails near where you are, which I find interesting, but you can only access it through going on their paid program. So I'm not sure if it's the way to go. You're spending $1,400 on the Garmin 970, but and then you've got to pay a subscription to access some of the features. I'm not sure whether that's the smartest business model going around, but hey, they look great.
Yeah, I don't know about you, but I got bombarded with Garmin advertising on the weekend on email, my socials. Just seemed like any time I switched on my socials, any page I was on, there was a bombardment there of Garmin, particularly with those new models. So they must have just gone out on a blanket blitz. Must have cost them a fortune.
Absolutely. And but the only good news is that the 965 and the 955, I think the 955 is very few out there anyway at the moment, because that was replaced by the 965. But I reckon coming into the half yearly sales, there'll be some really good bargains on the 965. So
Definitely. So I finally decided to increase my Ks this week. I figure with Gold Coast being 6 weeks away, I probably should get into the at least 20. But what I did was I actually broke it. I know. I actually broke it down into 2 parts. So I did 16 Ks, and then I waited about an hour later and did a very, very, very easy 4K just to see how the body would feel after the break from because and for the listeners that haven't heard us talk about it previously in Gold Coast, Tim and I, we're very smart people and we're getting value for our money and we're doing all 4 races. But for me, I'll be going straight from the half into the 10. If I'm lucky, I'll have 5 minutes break, but then I'll have a longer break in between the 10 and the 5. So I just wanted to kind of simulate that to see how I would go. I think I'm going to be walking the 5K. Let's put it that way. But very good to get back into the higher figures again. So I was very happy about that. So thanks, guys. That's all we've got time for that. Now it's the exciting part, which I know people look forward to. It's that time. It's News of the Week. So, Tim, what's been happening around the world this week?
Thanks, Lucia. John Carrera. Now, I don't know if you guys remember him, but he was the winner of Boston Marathon a couple of weeks ago. He was also the winner back in Chicago last year. So he's a 2-time World Marathon Major winner. He's from Kenya, and he has come out in the last week saying, I'm not saying that I'm going to attack the world record. It is a mark that is also in my mind this year, he said. He's aiming to become only the 2nd man in history to run a sub 2:01 official marathon, and he wants to achieve the mark this year. He said, winning Boston this year was good for me. It has given me a lot of confidence. We all know the late Kelvin Kipton is the only man that has ever run an official 2:01 or sub 2:01 marathon, having clocked the 2 hours even and 35 seconds at the 2023 Chicago Marathon. We also know Kipchoge, the GOAT, his best time is 2:01.09 as the 2nd fastest time in the world. But we also know that he also set a sub 2 hour time running in the Ineos Challenge back in 2019. So John Carrera is really trying to step it up and trying to get into that ultra elite field or that ultra elite level. I guess he hasn't announced which race he plans on doing it this year, but my guess would be that it would either be Berlin or Chicago. And given that he ran Chicago and won it last year and obviously feels comfortable there, my bet is probably that he's on Chicago. It gives him a little bit more time as well between Boston and Chicago. But, guys, I think it's really good news that he's talking that way. I'd love to see him, but what are your thoughts? Do you think it's going to be Berlin? Do you going to be Chicago? We know Berlin's probably a little bit flatter than Chicago, but what are your thoughts?
I think it'd be Berlin because even though Chicago is flat, but it still has those couple of inclines, and so really, if you want to give it a good crack, I think Berlin.
Yeah. How old is he? Does anybody know his age?
Mid-20s, I think, around 25 or 26.
Okay, so still feel it. Yeah, okay, yeah. Probably Berlin, to be honest. Berlin would probably be my guess that he'll pick it up on.
Yeah, you got to remember Kelvin Kipton set the world record in Chicago.
Yeah, and Cora seems to enjoy running in America. So he's 28.
No, no.
28.
There you go.
Thanks, Tony.
Yeah, so stay tuned for that one, but it's getting exciting. And the other one we've got is Sarway, who won in London, who absolutely blitzed the field from 25Ks on. He will no doubt want to run another race this year and probably also go quick. So it'll be interesting who comes out first saying where they're going to run and whether the other one wants to race them or wants to dodge them, I guess. So we'll just wait and see. Now, the other one is London. So they've done the statistics on London. They've had a look at it. As we know, London was the most participated race with over 56,000 runners running it this year. But on a gender equality point of view, it was also the most gender equal mass participation race ever seen, with 25,000 running women participating out of the 56,000. Which represents about 44% of the field. The London Marathon has come a long way. In 1981, which was the inaugural race, the field comprised of just 4% of females, and it has steadily grown throughout the history of the event. And it's a statement that London Marathon has been trying to really push over the last number of years, is to try and push the gender equality in the race. So it's good to see, I reckon, to get that sport level up to that 50-50. I think it's really good. But, guys, I think I have to admit, I don't really notice that there's an underrepresentation of females at any of these marathons. I've always looked at it and I seem to think there's just as many, if not more, females when you look around the fields that I see anyway. But maybe I'm blind. I don't know. What do you guys think?
No, I would agree with you, Tim. It doesn't seem that there's a gender imbalance either way to me. Like, it does seem pretty equal.
Yeah, I agree. I don't feel misrepresented in any way, shape, or form. So
Yeah, I found it surprising because I would not have thought that, but interesting. It's interesting. I'm just having a quick look at because I'm sure. Now, this may be... So at the moment, we've got 661 7-star finishes, or 7-star people at the moment. So remember that number, 661. And out of that, we've got 360 female, which, do your sums, would say that we've got 301 males. So we've got more females than males currently with the 7-star.
There you go. So 55% to 45% or thereabouts.
Yeah, close enough too.
Yeah. There you go. It's obviously it is changing, and it's changing rapidly, which is good to see. Now, my last bit of news, it's some sad news. We know the troubles that are happening in Ukraine, between Ukraine and Russia at the moment. And Ukrainian athlete Petro. Oh, here we go. I get the bad names this week.
Come on.
Petro Shukalevich. Sorry, Petro, but unfortunately, I can't get the name right there. But he has died defending his country from Russian invaders. Petro was a 3-time winner of the Morozhaya Eco Trail and he was also a national marathon champion in Ukraine. He first joined the fight way back in 2015, and you got to remember, back in 2015 they were fighting over the annexed sections of Crimea, and he served in an operational brigade at that point. And over the last 2 years, he sustained injuries on the front line, and in both instances, he returned to continue the fight. But unfortunately, recently, he passed away, and he's survived by his wife, who was also serving in the armed forces, as well as his little daughter as well. So our thoughts go out to all the athletes and all the people who are over there fighting in that horrible, horrible war. But it's absolutely tragic news to hear examples like this, where sportsmen are having to give up the sport they love to go and defend the country that they love. And it's pretty bad. It also, I guess, really hits home when you think you've had a bad day out there running, or you've had a bad training session, or you miss a day or two with your training and you think it's bad time. sort of puts things into perspective a little bit when you hear stories like that. So unfortunately, I'm ending it on some sad news, but that's the news this week, guys.
Yeah,
Thanks, Tim.
can I just make a quick comment? Yeah, very sad news, and I don't want to undermine that sad news and what it actually means. But Luch, do you think Tim could speak to the person that does the news compilation and get him to fix up the fact that he's getting all the bad names? Do you think that's a possibility?
Maybe we can put that in as a viewer, as a listener question for next week's one.
Possibly, yeah, possibly.
Yeah.
So we need.
You would like to take over the news section, is what you're telling me, Tony.
Oh no, that was nowhere near inferred.
Happy to hand it over.
I'm just so. I always have a giggle when Tim complains about the names, and I'm thinking, well, you're the one that put it together, right? Okay.
Yes, I did, but I'm happy to hand it over. All the time spent researching and finding these stories. But no,
you do a great job.
You do a very good job, Tim.
Yeah,
very good job.
Petro Shukalovic. I can't even do it justice. But
no, I wouldn't even try.
Apologies, yeah.
Well, thank you, Tim. So now it's that time where we talk about one of my favourite parts of running is race expos. So, guys, I'm just going to keep it nice and easy. I'm going to kick it off with some questions, and we can just chime in as we need to. Because curious to get your thoughts, because I've done some expos with Tara and Tim. They've seen me in my prime, but Tony, I've never done an expo with you yet. So, very curious to hear your thoughts. So, first one is, what's the best race expo you've been to and why?
I'll start, and I'll say the Dopey Challenge, the Disney one in Florida, 2019. That was absolutely amazing. That was probably my favorite race expo out of all the race expos. It was just race expo on steroids. Yeah. They had everything. Christmas ornaments. They had thongs. They had headbands. They had, you name it, and you could buy it. If you wanted rulers, if you wanted a laptop with Run Disney on it, you could buy whatever you wanted, and it had Run Disney on it. So
handbags.
I got the best handbag in Run from that one, and I love it still. So yeah, it's got Mickey running through all the painted on the side. It's got Mickey painted on the side. It's got running through all the worlds. So yep, definitely Run Disney in Florida.
Now, on a side note on that, I don't know if I ever told you guys, but this was before they introduced the Club Run Disney. I actually paid extra so I could get early access into the expo on day one.
And yes, Luch, you have told us. I think that's now the fourth time you've shared that. but that's how much it means to you to get early access to the expo, right?
Exactly. And
it is important there, because whilst it is a good expo, the merch is very much a snatch and grab at times, because there are people there that just go and buy it who are not running, who then go and post it up on Expo, and it does attract, that particular expo does attract a lot of resellers who go there and just clear out whole racks of clothing and merchandise to then put it up on eBay about 2 hours later.
Yeah, that's wrong. But anyway.
Yeah.
The best one I've ever been to, well, it's a bit of a dual one. It's New York 2018 and Chicago 2023. And they just had the vibe more so than anything else. I guess the very first running expo I ever went to was Gold Coast Marathon back in whenever that was, back in 2017, 2018, or might even have been younger, but earlier when we were doing the 10K. So that sort of gave me a bit of a feel, because I think Gold Coast actually put on a pretty decent expo. But New York in 2018 was just Gold Coast on steroids. And then the closest thing that's come to that would be Chicago 2023.
Yeah, and Gold Coast actually put on an absolutely fantastic expo for what it is, out of all the Australian marathons, expos that I've been to, I reckon Gold Coast does it best. So, yep.
And Tim, yourself?
I was going to say my pick was Chicago last year. They do it well. From the moment you walk in, they sort of scan your ID. You go to the nominated counter. You pick up your bib. It's very seamless. And then you've got we spent probably 4 hours in there just going up and down and looking at all these products and looking at all this merchandise. And it's so well organised, getting people flowing through it that you're not lining up in big lines. And I would say Chicago is probably the best I've been to out of all of them.
I think for me, not necessarily the best in terms of merchandise and stuff like that, but in terms of history behind location, Berlin. Because the fact that it's at an old airport and you walk, and pretty much as soon as you walk through, you walk into an old baggage area. That was just fascinating to see, and to see like one of the old planes out on the tarmac. The organisation itself was shocking, but the actual location and the significance of that airport, I just found fascinating.
Yeah.
But I think for me, in terms of best expo, it's hard to beat New York because there's like literally everything there. So I loved that one. Now, on the flip side, what's been the worst race expo you guys have been to and why? And I'm going to start with Tony.
Boston.
Why? Like, didn't you want to join the Navy SEALs or get some new roofing?
Boston. That's all I can say. It's etched in my mind. Tokyo was a relatively close second to worst too, and that's and I actually liked the setup of Tokyo. It's just that normally when you go and to an expo, you actually want to see some merchandise and not just empty shelves. So, but Boston by far the worst.
Tara?
Yeah, look, if we're going for the majors, Boston doesn't even come close to what it should be. Boston is, I don't know, I'm with Tony on that. Obviously, there's a lot of smaller races I've been to, and you just go, okay, is that it? But yeah, out of the majors or the bigger races I've been to, Gold Coast, hands down, is way better than Boston. Like, Boston is probably down there with like those little races that you go to for me. So yeah. Yep.
And Tim?
Locally, I would say it would be Melbourne Marathon. It's the second or third biggest marathon in Australia, and they say they've got an expo, and it's outside. It's in the forecourt of the MCG. It's not undercover, and it's just a few gazebos, and that's about it. And you looked at it when we went there, whenever it was 2016, 2017, it was very underwhelming, and you're thinking, where's the expo, especially after going through the likes of Gold Coast and others. I'd also say local ones, Sunshine Coast, Brisbane, they call them, there's a race expo there as well, but you get there and there's 4 stores. So I think events need to say clearly if they're going to have an expo or if it's just a bib pickup with a couple of pop-up stores next to them. And I think if you're going to class it as an expo, it needs to be a big event. It needs to call in all the local running communities and running groups and have some meaning to it rather than a couple of gazebos on the forecourt at the MCG out in the open, subject to rain and all the rest of it.
No, agreed. I think for me, my worst one was Run Disney Paris. I did that in 2018 and I was all excited. I've just done Berlin, gone to Paris to run 3 races there. And I'm like, that's it. Yep, I'm going to spend big at the expo. I got in the queue about 2 hours before the thing was due to open. I was out in half an hour. It was just, there wasn't hardly anything. I'm like, I wasted all this time queuing for this. Like, everyone was so disappointed. So I think for me, Run Disney Paris was the worst one.
That's weird, isn't it? Because the difference between, and because you did the same Run Disney one in Florida as what I did, and the difference between the two Run Disney Expos has been a huge comparison.
And the thing, because the Run Disney Paris at the moment doesn't exist because it stopped just before COVID. Well, it stopped because of COVID, and they've never brought it back as of yet. And I don't think it'll come back for a while because apparently they're doing some works at Paris Disney, but it's not actually run by Run Disney in America. It's just licensed and it's run by, I think, a local company. So it's everyone always used to complain. So yes, I'll be interested to see if they ever bring it back. So we've covered the best and the worst. What is the expo location and the accessibility impact on your overall race weekend experience? Like, is the location important for an expo? Should it be central, or what's the best one in terms of location?
I'll start.
Tim starts.
Sorry. You keep mixing us up, Lucia, so I thought I'd throw in and go start this one. In my space, I think an expo needs to be, if it's a big city expo, it needs to be in a central location where people who are traveling, who may not have vehicles, can access it. It needs to be accessible by public transport. It should be, in my mind, close to a start or a finish area, because that's generally where people will be staying. So it's close to those areas. And I think if it is, then you create a nice little vibe in that area. You tend to have, like Boston, whilst we put the expo down, it is in the finishing straight. It is literally in the straight, 100, 200 meters from the finish line. And as a result, that precinct around the expo, around the finish line, becomes a real focal point for it. Whereas if you look at, say, London, you've got your finish precinct there at the Mall, but the expo is so far away. It isn't even at Greenwich where the start line is. It's just at some random convention centre that's way up the Thames River somewhere. So I think if you really want a good vibe and a really good feel for your event, having the expo in close proximity to either the start or the finish where people can congregate is a good thing.
Yeah, and just to back it up, I think Boston does have the best location because of that, but Sydney's not too bad. It's centrally located in the city, so it's easy to get to. But you think about most of the other expos, and it's hard to actually get a vibe around what is a central location. I mean, for New York, the expo would need to be in the Central Park area, I would presume, for it to be considered central. But it's a bit of a journey to get to the expo there. Tim's already talked about London, because that's a couple of bus trips and a cut lunch away. Even Berlin. I mean, Berlin wasn't bad. I believe we actually walked back from the expo to the Brandenburg Gate, so it wasn't too bad. But it really is about just trying to, get that centralized vibe. And Boston does it better than anyone else. That finishing area, Boston Street, down in Copley Square, etc., etc. So I think that there's a real vibe that Boston generates, and I guess that's why the expo itself is so disappointing, because everything else around Boston is on steroids. So, but yeah, that's my thoughts. Boston's definitely the best location. Sydney's a good location, so looking forward to getting back to Sydney Expo.
Thank God they changed the location, Tony.
Yeah, I heard 2 years back it was once again a couple of train trips and a cut lunch away. So
literally in the middle of nowhere. Tara, your thoughts?
Look, Chicago was a bit of a hike out of and it didn't really have a lot of public transport that hit you where it needs to be. So I think we walked about 40 minutes from our accommodation to get there. But look, we're runners, so to me, 40-minute walk is really not that big a deal.
It looked so much less, but didn't it? Because we made this.
Yeah,
we were looking at the map. Oh, we can walk to it, and then 40 minutes later, you're still going, my God.
Yeah,
but
and it might
be longer. And we're walking past the Bean, and we're walking past Buckingham Fountain, and we're walking past Soldier Field, and just soaking it all in the the Fields Museum and all those sort of things on the way there. So it was actually a nice walk with good views, but you're right, it was quite a bit out of town, and then the public transport was pretty minimal.
Yep.
So next one.
It was a good expo.
Very, very, very good expo. So, in an ideal world, what sort of exhibitors would you guys like to see at a race expo? Should it be just running equipment, or should it be kind of like Boston, where there's absolutely everything?
I definitely want the hair and the makeup and the roofing and knives. Everyone has to buy knives, roofing products, and get their hair and makeup done at an expo. Yeah, that's definitely something that I recommend having. Now, if you can't hear the facetiousness in my voice, that's one thing that I recommend leaving out in every single expo. I would rather have 6 shops with different running socks than having any of those mentioned above. They're annoying.
Tony?
Definitely running gear. And I mean, at the end of the day, we're runners. So socks, shoes, innovative products, there should be a bit of a tech zone. A little bit of a, I know that I'm probably jumping ahead a little bit, but places where you can try stuff, that sort of thing. But I also think where the expos do let themselves down is in their food and their hospitality offer, because many time you're at an expo and all you want to do is just take a bit of a break, take the weight off your legs, sit down and have a nice meal or a nice bit of food. And even Chicago, if I remember, they had some catering caravans inside or something.
Yeah.
And they were like fried chicken, and I'm just thinking, oh mate, I'd actually like to sit down somewhere nice, And when I think back on all of the expos, London had their food vendors outside as you walked into down the centre state, but there was really nothing on offer there. It was just your traditional sort of cheap takeaway. God, well, it wasn't cheap, but your takeaway convention fare. But yeah, it needs to be running gear related, and there needs to be a place where people can just sit, relax, have a cup of coffee in a nice environment, and then get them to go again, sort of thing. So I just don't think they cater for that.
I will give that to Berlin, because they were in that big airport and they had that outdoor entertainment area. They actually had a really nice area there that you could sit down in, and they had the vans and music playing, and they actually had like a sort of a race, like, at London, how they have that nice area sort of. They had that at Berlin in the Expo, if everyone remembers correctly, or if we explored enough. I managed to find that anyway.
Yeah, I think at Berlin had the right idea, but when we went there, it was packed. So Sharon and I ended up sitting on some steps. So
yeah, I think for me, the thing I like to see at expos when I'm traveling the world is I like to see local products.
Yeah.
And one of the things, I know we live in a globalized world now, and we live in big brand world where those who've got the biggest amount and most amount of money tend to get the biggest spaces and tend to push the smaller players out. But it's one of the things I really liked about the London one was we saw a lot of UK type products, running products at the UK one. We saw a lot of American products in Newbury Street in Boston, not at the Boston Expo, but in Newbury Street. We saw them a lot in Chicago and New York, and a little bit in Berlin. But I really like that. And what I'm seeing in recent times is a lot of those expos are not catering for those smaller companies that have a niche product or a local set of running socks, or a local running shoe company, or a local clothing company. You just don't sort of see them anymore. They're sort of priced out of those expos, and we'll get to it a bit more, but I think the big brands do have a part to play in this. Obviously, you go to an event and it's sponsored by Nike or New Balance or Adidas, and they have rights there where they want exclusivity. But I think that's to the detriment of the other brands and the other exhibitors, because the companies like Adidas, New Balance, and Nike are not just running shoes. They're also running gear, apparel, and they're moved into things like apps and electronic stuff and stuff you wear as well. So as a result, because of their exclusivity, they are prohibiting a lot of other exhibitors in those spaces that may have better products or similar products from being able to show their wear.
Yeah,
So
no.
I think me, I'd rather see a lot wider range of products, but more localized to that area of the world we're in.
Which kind of leads me on to my next question, which you've kind of answered a bit. So, what sort of running gear vendors would you like to see at an expo? Like, if you could have just one type of vendor, what type of vendor would it be? Tara?
I think I like the idea, like when you go to Gold Coast, and this is all running expos, but I'm just using this as my example. You walk in and ASICS, who are your main sponsor, you walk in and you can buy the Gold Coast merch there. So if you want to say Gold Coast Marathon 2025, you can go get it personalized with your own name on it or whatever you want. You can buy your shoes, your shorts, your socks, your hats, your whatever you want there, and then you walk through and buy whatever else you want. But I do actually quite like that idea, and I know Tim says that it does take away from other vendors. But if you have that as your main sponsor there, but then you allow all the others into that other part as smaller stalls, that would be fine. So say if, for example, you have ASICS as your main sponsor, then you can still have New Balance and Brooks and stuff as one of your smaller stalls in there more. That would be better for me.
Tim?
But yeah.
Yeah, 100%. Exactly that. Give the bigger guys a bit more space. Give them the first right of, visibility, but let everyone else in. Don't block them out.
And Tony, your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm very similar. I think the more vibe that's created by having a range of products there, the better off it is, and it's important to support the sponsors. At the end of the day, they're the ones funding the marathon. But I don't think people are going to shy away from supporting the sponsors. They're going to buy their ASICS shoes or their ASICS branded marathon shirts or whoever it is that is branding. I mean, whoever is sponsoring the race. But I think it's so important that you have like a range and that it's set up in some sort of orderly process. So you've got tech gear together, you've got socks together, you've got shorts and the clothing. But I think also it's about catering for what we're seeing as the changing demographic, right? So we've already talked about the female demographic going more and more. And I would imagine that there is a much greater consciousness around running fashion in that demographic than what us blokes would have. I mean, I like to be color coordinated. If I'm wearing my orange shoes, I'll wear my orange New York top. But having that fashion offer, I don't think we see that enough, and we know the brands that we're thinking of. You see a lot of the people out there in there, and I don't necessarily want to name them, but we know the fashion brands that a lot of people wear purely because of the brand. So to get them along, to create that little bit of a fashion zone, I think is an important thing of how you build that vibe within the shop. Let the blokes go play with watches and apps and everything, and then let the women have a good look and a hurried look at some new fashion or some new gear and whatnot. So,
or it could be vice versa. The females might be wanting to look at the tech, and the males may be wanting to look at the fashion.
100%, and by at the moment they don't cater for either. And the thing is, when you specialize, if you know who your target customer is, and you put that in place, you are going to get carryovers. You are going to get people that aren't the target market. So of course, we're going to see the females in the tech zone. We're going to see, potentially some of the males in the fashion zone, because there's a little bit of money being spent in this running trend, and you see a lot of people with some pretty cool gear out there when you run on a weekend. So not everyone wears their Run the World singlets. So people are in some fashion. So, but yeah, I mean, just my thoughts. It needs to be running related, but we need to do a little bit more about putting in zones so that we can relate to it a little bit more.
Do you think that with the rise of online stores and online shopping, that a lot of brands are looking at it going, well, why would I go and spend money setting up a store or purchasing a spot in a store, putting up a display, employing people to man that store for maybe 50,000 people to walk past my store over 2 days, when I can go and put a mass ad out onto Facebook or into social media and have 500,000 people see that same thing and then purchase direct from me? Do you think it's impacting the expos?
I think it is, but I missed that in the title where it said, let's choose our perfect expo, but let Tim bring it down by talking about the realities of the new world. So, sorry.
I'm somebody who actually likes to touch and feel things, though.
Yeah.
Especially a new product. It's fine if I've got a pair of shoes and I know exactly what pair of shoes I want. I would know what size I want, or if I've bought those pair of socks before. But I actually like to touch and feel new things. Like, to me, that's the fun part, and it hypes me up for the race as well. So to me, I love going through those expos and getting that excitement. You know, you're seeing people you know, and you're getting that excitement. That's part of like going to the, you know, when you're standing on the start line, you can feel those pre-race nerves. That's the start of it all. Do you know?
Yeah.
But where I was getting to was, if the rise of
Lucia, he's not giving it up. He's not giving it up.
No. I was. There's a reason why I asked that question, and then it leads into this point, right? So if the rise of online shopping is maybe impacting it, why aren't Expo organisers looking at alternative things, right? And one of the things that used to happen at many expos that I've seen drop away over the years was 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 years ago, you'd go to an expo and there'd be half a dozen different races there represented from around the world. And even at Gold Coast, there would be the Singapore Marathon would be there, the Kuala Lumpur Marathon would be there, the Queenstown, New Zealand would be there. They don't seem to be at the expos anymore promoting their own events. And maybe that's where expos need to move. Okay, online shopping, done and dusted. Let's look at other things that we can promote that are tangible, so people can touch them or feel them or have a look at photos, but also, you know, feel like they've got some level of involvement and it fills up the space that we've got.
Yeah, you make a good point. And
thank you.
Yeah, and even before you made up a good point, but we are looking perfect expo. Maybe there's an opportunity for more kiosks at expo and vendors minimizing their stock holding and being able to walk people through a design process where you're getting a customized shirt with a customized name and customized delivery options, you know. But yeah, I think the last time I saw, like what you're talking about, a race at an expo was Sydney, when we saw it at Berlin. We saw it at Chicago. I think I even saw it at Boston that year in 2023. So, yeah, you make a good point.
So kind of carrying on from that, now we all have a good freebie at an expo. What sort of freebies would you like to see included at expos? And I'm curious to see what Tara's going to say, because I've got a certain even though I didn't do Chicago with you, but I know one booth that you walked around a few times.
Oh, I can't remember which one I walked around a few times. What was it?
Biofreeze.
Oh man, yeah, always up for a good freebie. So yes, Biofreeze. Definitely love that stuff. For those that don't know what Biofreeze is, go Google it. You don't think you can get it in Australia, but it's the best stuff ever. But yes, things like that. We got some magnesium and what was the other stuff in the tape, Tim? Magnesium and menthol. So you know the strapping tape that's already pre-cut, you know, really nice stuff.
AT tape.
Yeah, got some of that when we were in one of the races in America, and strapped Patrick's leg because he got bad ITB issues. He absolutely loves this stuff. So we've actually gone out and bought it online through Amazon because he loves it. It's stays on and it's perfect for them. I quite like things like, this is more of a Queensland thing probably, but I love my lip balms and my free little sunscreens, because quite often when you go to these races, you go, oh, I forgot my sunscreen. And yeah, there's your sunscreen. So you don't have to worry about it for race day. You know, little things like that, lip balms. We've had sunglasses, buffs. You know, I love everything free, you know, as long as it's running related. I really don't like getting that junk stuff in my race packs that is just like paper. It's like, that's no good to me. I can't use that. That's just cutting down trees for no reason. So to me, I prefer to see something tangible that I can use.
Tony?
I've never really, apart from BioFreeze, I've never really partaken of too many freebies. And I guess when we first went to Gold Coast, we grabbed every freebie under the sun. And then 6 months later, we were throwing them in the bin because it was all the expiry date stuff. So, yeah, so we're very selective, I guess, with the freebies. But, you know, trial products, sample products, yeah, just anything that's new into the market, I think there is a definite need. But, yeah, I'm not too fussed either. That's not going to drag me into an expo to know that there's more freebies.
And Tim?
No, but competitions are good. So we Tara won a trip to Queenstown at the Gold Coast Marathon for the Queenstown Marathon weekend, and she got accommodation and race entry and flights. I think the flights may not have been included. The flights were included.
Flights. Yep, got flights.
Yeah, everything was included: flights, entry, and accommodation for Queenstown Marathon weekend one year, just from filling in a competition form. So those are the sort of things that are good. I'm a bit like Tony. Yeah, the freebies are nice, but you don't always grab them. And I probably more like the samples. I'll sample the gels. I'll sample the nutrition drinks. I'll sample the little Cliff bars and things they've got. And you know, sometimes you find a good product just by sampling. And we've bought liquids before, hydration liquids and things like that, just by sampling. So yeah, definitely for it. What about you, Lucia?
Can I just say they always taste better at the expo, but don't they? So that's pretty nice. And then you go out for your next long run after the race, and you go, "Oh, geez, what did I ever like in that?"
Yeah, like I'm the type, I'll only take something if I know, if I really want to try it, or if I've used it and I liked it. It's amazing that you will see people just grabbing everything, and you think to yourself, have you got any idea as to what you're grabbing? Because similar as to what you said, Tim, like in the end, I just end up throwing half of it out. So I'm like, I'm only going to take stuff if I really want to try it. Or for instance, BioFreeze, that I know I love it and that I want samples of it. So if there's anyone listening that knows anyone at BioFreeze, get them to ship to Australia, because that would be, it's an untapped market, 100% untapped market.
I think it's more that it doesn't pass our
minor details.
Our PBS yeah.
Minor details.
We have the same issue.
We have the same issue. Chemicals are in it. That's all I've got to say.
We have the same issue with sports beans. You can't buy sports beans here in Australia, even though you buy them over in the US. So yeah. So
now we're starting to run out of time. So I'm just going to move on and ask some rapid questions. So just simple yes or no's. So would you like to see the following at race expos? So would you like to see medical professionals giving advice and information?
Only relevance based on the race, but that's not a biggie for me.
Music and entertainment?
Yes.
Tim's not sold on it.
Maybe. Yep. I could do that.
What about a track to actually try shoes on, like even if it's just a 100-meter track?
Yep.
Yes.
There needs to be something. You know, there's not a lot. There's not enough physical tryout stuff places. So.
And what about a more inclusive areas for women and Indigenous people and non-binary athletes?
Yeah, I think everyone should just be treated the same. Like, we're all runners. It's
and I'd hate to be saying yes, no, or indifferent because I'm not part of those groups. So if they feel that there's less inclusivity, let them be the ones that say, hey, what if we were to do this? But I don't want to be putting my opinion out in that space.
Now, the last of the rapid fire questions, I'm curious to see what you guys are going to say to this one. Elite marathon runners meet and greets.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Selfie locations
Yep.
with them, you name it.
Hey.
So
Tara
Pay
doesn't
$5 to get a selfie.
100%. Yeah. Tara's like, nah.
No, we've already got the 4 famous people. Why do we need to?
Okay, so Tara, let me ask you this one: if they did a photo opportunity at the Sydney Expo, and you could have a photo with Kipchoge, would you
Absolutely, without a doubt, I would stand in a 4-hour line for that
How
one.
much?
Yeah.
How much would you be willing to pay for that? Is $5 fair and reasonable for a photo?
Depends on where the money's going to.
Yeah, I'd sort of.
Depends on where the money's going to. If it's going to charity, I'm happy. Yeah. If it's going to Kipchoge's publicity team, then no.
I think it comes down to the fee that they pay some of these people. So, you know, I don't feel that I would pay to get a selfie. But if they were to increase their appearance fee by 20% because they were to be available for 2 hours, you wouldn't want them on their feet for too long. At an expo where people could come along and just take selfies in a controlled way, I think that that's a different thing altogether. I know Tim's talking about time, but can we just touch on some of those other things? Bib Expo, Bib Pickup and Expos, should they be separate or combined?
I like the idea of actually having them probably separated. And I know that sounds weird, but some people just don't want to go to the expo. Just have a separate area where you just go in, pick up your bib and go again. A lot of people do not want to buy anything else. They don't even care about the medal. They just want to run the race and go. So keep them separate.
Yeah,
doesn't bother me.
Yeah, it doesn't bother me. I think it's needed as part of the expo to get your traffic and you know, because I think if everyone had the choice, I think expos would disappear because you may lose 50% of your target base. So, and the other one that I just thought was interesting to talk through again was just the Tim's written down mock start line walkthroughs, elevation previews, etc., toilet drink stations. And I think that's a really interesting one because when we sort of looked at this topic, I sort of put the old thinking hat on and really thought about what should we be doing, because I think the expo model is fundamentally broken at the moment and they really need to think about how can they do it different. And, you know, having a room where you could get, you know, point of view video of what the start area looks like, what the toilets look like, so people can walk in there and the walls are got videos of it feels like you're there sort of scenario. Virtual reality, but you don't want all the headsets, so I'm sure that they could work through something like that. I think one of the key things that are missing from expos is just that excitement that the influencers bring. And, you know, we've all got a love-hate relationship with influencers, and some people would probably argue that in some way, shape and form, we are helping that influencing. We are potentially seen as influencers by some people. But I think it's important that you bring the latest trends, right? So that what we see in Boston, where Newbury Street is just a buzz of excitement, and the expos, you're like walking into the old man's barbershop. It's just, there's just, you've got to find that balance where you can do the both. And I just think my last little point, and sorry for just commandeering the podcast for 30 seconds or more. I just think there's an opportunity there in terms of podcasting, what we do, right? And, you know, New York Roadrunners have their own podcast. I'm not sure if any of the other majors do. They probably do in some way, shape or form. But to have people just roaming around getting not the point of view of the elites, but the point of view of, the Taras and the Tims and, and then putting that onto like a podcast, like releasing a new episode like every hour. The way AI is going now, it's so easy to do with editing and whatnot. I think that would bring a vibe, because then people would be like looking forward to them, going out and catching them. So I think there's some real opportunities if they start to embrace some of this stuff that we've talked about.
And can I just add one thing? I know we are running out of time, but going back to one of your things there that you were saying about the mock startup line, perhaps nobody, well, I know Tim quite often, will always read the race manual. You get emailed through the race little booklet beforehand. Perhaps have that at the Expo, but in interactive form, as you were saying.
Yeah,
so that everybody can actually say, you were told this, it was in your race pack, and it was also at the Expo, so that they've got no excuse to say, well, I didn't know there was a bag drop. I didn't know that you had to do this. It's all there. So, race manual for dummies at the Expo.
Yeah, good point. Well done.
Well, I'm sure many of the race, many race directors out there will listen to this episode and take the feedback on board. So no doubt we'll see improved expos in the next couple of years, I dare say. Well, guys, hopefully we've been able to get the juices going on all things race organisers. As I've said, need to listen to us. We know a thing or two about expos. So hopefully we will see some improvements in the future. Now, it's that time of the week which everyone loves, but more than the news. It's Tim's tip of the week. Tim, over to you.
Thanks, Lucia. I'm just thinking with all this stuff and the time frames that we're going through, there's probably another episode in all this at some stage in the future. So I'll keep that one in mind. But my tip this week is we're getting close to winter. In fact, this weekend, when the episode is released, we'll hit our winter in the southern hemisphere. And it means it's getting colder, it's getting darker in the mornings, and it means we need to look after ourselves a little bit more. So we need to take our time to warm up before we do our run. We need to start off slow. We need to, take our time before we get up to full speed. We need to work those muscles and get them moving, get the blood flowing through the system to be able to work effectively. It also means that if we're doing our early runs and it is dark in the morning, that we're watching our step, where we're going. We're using a headlamp or a torch on our phone if we need to for a little while, just to make sure we don't trip over and hurt ourselves. And the key thing is, I guess, if you're starting to feel any niggles or things that aren't quite right, you need to slow down, and potentially you need to stop as well to get it looked at. There's no point going out there, particularly now as we're heading into the racing season, getting an injury right now because you didn't warm up properly or because you tripped over something because it was too dark. So my tip this week is look after yourself in this cold, dark time that we're going into in the Southern Hemisphere. Conversely, if you're in the Northern Hemisphere, fun times ahead. It's nice and warm. Go for it.
Awesome. Thanks, Tim. So, guys, this episode is about to end, but just before we do, Tony, what's on for next week?
Hey, next week we turn 100. Officially our 100th episode, our 100th full episode. I might just throw that in the main episode that we do every week. And when we all started this podcast, we were talking about let's get to 10 and see what happens, and now we're at 100. So I think that's pretty awesome. So over the last few weeks, we have been collecting questions from you, our listeners. There's still some more we want to collect, but you really do need to be quick in getting them to us about all the things that you ever wanted to ask a runner, but weren't quite sure. So this is an episode that we all are really, really looking forward to. And I found it interesting that when you start looking at things like what are our most popular episodes, what are our audience loving. And I know this probably will not come as a surprise to you, Lucia, but our episode back in episode 24, where we were mastering jeffing, marathon jeffing is our most popular episode that's out there. And then our second most popular episode is Jen Kellett, the Australian age champion. And if you, episode 33, so if you go back and you listen to those, we're talking about jeffing, and then Jen's talking about zone 2 training. And so even though they're our most popular episodes, it's also showing that people are looking for more information. So that's just an example of some of the questions that you could be asking us, because if we don't know, we'll certainly find out. But yeah, that's next week. It's going to be an episode certainly not to miss.
Awesome. Thanks, Tony. Unfortunately, that is it for tonight's show. Guys, it's been great talking to you again tonight. Fantastic having Tara back. The awesome foursome is back together, which is great. Can't wait to do it next week for what will be a very special episode. Very much looking forward to it. And have a great week ahead, guys. And good luck at the Brisbane Marathon on the weekend. And Tara, please take it easy. I know you will, because you know what to do.
Absolutely.
We love making this podcast for you, our listeners. Let us know what you think. Message us on Instagram, Facebook, or email us at happyrunning@flyingrunner.com. If you've got any running tips, share them with us, please. You can watch this episode on YouTube and on Spotify, or listen on Apple, Amazon, and all major platforms. Every step counts. Keep running, and we'll see you next time on the Flying Runr podcast. Happy running.
Happy running.
Happy running.